Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons and think about some of the external attributes that a light was shined on this week from the ICV2 article that posited that Hasbro may be positioning Wizards of the Coast for sale. Okay? Alright, so let's jump into this. So, specifically, ICV2 is they report on tabletop gaming as an industry, and they actually give hard numbers, and it's a very reputable source in my opinion. In fact, honestly, I don't think anybody comes really close to coverage that ICV2 gives for tabletop role-playing games from an industry numbers perspective, which is incredibly rare. All right, so you have that there, and then so basically, ICV2 published an article in which one of its article writers gave evidence for why he thinks that Hasbro Gaming would sell Wizards of the Coast. Wizards of the Coast currently owns Dungeons & Dragons and Magic the Gathering. I thought his evidence was very compelling, and it really did paint a fascinating picture of a reality of a possible sale of Wizards of the Coast, right? So I was really fascinated when I saw this, and I saw articles covering the articles, and then this week it really it definitely got more attention, and I specifically saw that Dungeon Craft did a piece on it and Nerd Immersion did a piece on it, which is and so it's definitely picking up traction and people are talking about it. So with all that there, what I want to talk about today is our perception of Dungeons & Dragons as a community, and how little, and actually how incredibly narrow our view of the game has been, and also how stunted our view of the design lead and the design team has been, right? So whenever you, if you go on Twitter or if you go on YouTube, you will just see just literally thousands of articles and YouTube videos about this is how to make your ranger better, and complaints about the hardbacks for the Dungeons & Dragons adventures and source books and the core books are not the best bindings in the world, and just ad nauseum discussion about the game. And really, in many ways, just a ton of complaints, and then also a ton of, this is how you get your optimal build, right? Which, what's the value on either one of those? Especially when we now look at the situation, right? The other one is Twitter. There's tons of conversation on Twitter, just huge debates about which is the best edition, right? But we as a community, how often have we, right, been thinking about Mike Mearls and what he has to think about, right? So we're all like, hey, Mike Mearls, why didn't you fix the Ranger 5 years ago? It's been broke. The build's been broke. The build's been broke, right? Just all these ridiculous nonsense concerns. It's one of the best games in the world. They have done, they take care of the creative end of it. But the reality is now, this week, as we look at this situation where there's very serious discussion, there's questions, is the game we care about going to get sold to a new owner? And we have no idea who could buy it, right? There could be some, super loving, affectionate, right, owner swoop in from Silicon Valley, buy it for $1 billion, and give it lots of love and attention, and give it great money for the design team, and give it, great art, and great, it could work out, right? But on the other hand, we could see somebody buy it, an institution buy it who does not care in the least. As we're going to wring every last drop of blood from this stone that we can. We don't really care about its long-term future. We care about its short-term future, right? There could be real problems from a sale of Wizards of the Coast. Very real problems, right? And reality is, I think now, when we look back, Mike Mearls always knew that the game needed to be profitable, that being under Hasbro Gaming was going to be a challenge that he needed to deliver, right, from a business perspective, right? So while, many of us recognize that Mike Mearls really did this great creative task, now, in the light of this question of what even is the value of Dungeons & Dragons, Dungeon Craft this week actually said that he actually did coverage and said that he had read that 80% of the profits for Wizards of the Coast come from only 20% of the profits from Wizards of the Coast comes from Dungeons & Dragons. That 80% comes from Magic and whatever else they own, which is virtually nothing, so it's almost certainly Magic, right? That's $1 out of $5 is coming in from Dungeons & Dragons. And a game that was invented in 1993, right, is making more money that by 4 times more money than a game that was created in 1974, right? So, you know, Dungeons & Dragons had 22-year lead time on Magic the Gathering, and Magic the Gathering is still outselling it by 4 to 1. That's insane, right? Like, it's, to me, I can't believe that, right? But it also goes to that fact that, right, Mike Mearls knew, right? He knew from the beginning, right, of how complex and incredibly delicate Dungeons & Dragons was. It is a absolute, tabletop role-playing games are an absolutely horrific business model. They are really bad. They're not like video games. They're not like collectible games. They're not like board games. They just like, you sell somebody $150 worth of stuff, you lose them for 10 years, right? You can lose them for 10 years. They don't need a single thing beyond the PHP, the GMG, and the Monster Manual. That is a business model that is not great for the people who are creating the game, right? It's horrific. But it's the tradition, and Mike Mearls upheld that tradition and still delivered for Wizards of the Coast. So I don't really think we, as a community, we really give these business concerns the amount of attention and time and discussion that they really deserve. And I would also encourage you, I know this sounds a little bit self-serving, sorry, but because I am talking about it. But the reality is, think very closely about who you're listening to from the perspective of, think very, very closely about who you're actually listening to when it comes to the commentary that you're receiving. Is the commentary you're receiving really fairly assessing Dungeons & Dragons from all aspects, not just from the creative aspects? Because what is the point of somebody, paying attention to the creative aspects of the game if the game could be gone in 2 years, right? Like, and the other one that really, I think, is really, really fascinating is this idea, right? Just absolutely wild. Blows my mind to think about this issue is, think about the idea of what's happening on Twitter right now. One of the biggest things on Twitter right now is this push to, for a living wage for Dungeons & Dragons, for a living wage for indie. Nobody's really talking about the WotC folks in this, but they're saying, hey, a lot of these tabletop role-playing game designers and artists are making minimum wage or less, right? Are actually often making less than minimum wage, right? And saying, we really need a living wage and, more money for, for tabletop role-playing game designers. And that's a deep subject, right? But one of the things is, like, that discussion is being had over on Twitter, in my opinion, very much not even really acknowledging the issue that Dungeons & Dragons right now, from a perception view, as perceived by the world, is at a very tenuous point. The company that owns it, right, is like, there's good evidence that's been produced. They may not even value it, right? And that, that's terrifying. That's terrifying. And that's an organization that is paying a living wage, to their people, right? And the parent company is like, hey, do we need this? Why don't we just sell this off like it's a crate of bananas? And you're like, what? So I guess, the point of what I'm saying today is to you. So Nerd Immersion and Dungeon Craft, I'm going to point you to their channels, right? Because they were on it enough to realize, hey, somebody needs to be talking about this. This stuff is important. We need to be paying very close attention and to the fate of the game we care so much about. Is it being treated fairly? Is it safe? Right? because maybe we should stop squawking about the Ranger build if there's a danger to the game itself, to Dungeons and Dragons itself in its existence. Right? That's another one. Is there's so often it's just accepted that that the game is safe, that Dungeons and Dragons is safe, and that is really not a given. Really not a given in any way, right? So really choose carefully the commentators that you're listening to. If they ain't talking about this, they're not really paying attention. And I'll tell you right now, I have sympathy for that because I think Dungeons and Dragons is entirely complex. But they should be paying attention to this. It's important. All that's my opinion. I'd love to hear your opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.